建筑努力休息15年，一生的经验。
With the help of Soviet advisors, Mao's government began dozens of huge industrial projects. This development and Soviet help had to be paid for. Mao looked to China's peasants to foot the bill. But traditional family farms could not produce enough to pay for industry. In 1953, the communists began to socialize agriculture. First, they encouraged families to pool their property in small farms called cooperatives.
When you explained clearly to people what it meant to till the land together, with people working together, we would have more manpower and we would be able to increase production and our life would become better. When people accepted this, a few families started working together.
After the cooperative was set up, our life was much better. We could afford to raise pigs. Before, we didn't have enough grain to raise them. When the pigs grew, I sold them and got more cash. I also sold vegetable seeds in the town market. We had more land, enough labor, plus some sidelines, so our income increased.
Cooperatives grew at an astonishing speed. By the end of 1955, almost 2/3 of the peasants had joined. This was much faster than Mao had ever hoped. Seizing the momentum, he ordered the country to move to the next stage of socialism, to collectivization. But for most peasants, this was going too far. In collectives, private property was abolished. People had to give up their animals, their tools, and their land. Party officials put intense pressure on families to join.
By then, people were unhappy. They weren't comfortable forming a collective with the whole village. Some villagers didn't get on with others. My father was quite well off, so he didn't want to join either. I was a party official in the village. I told him if I weren't an official, I wouldn't insist he join. If you didn't join, you wouldn't look good in front of your neighbors. With my persuasion and the example of others, he gave in. But he joined with reluctance. His income was quite high. It went down after he joined, so he was unhappy.
Within months, all of China's 600 million peasants were working in huge collectives. For the first time in history, the farm output of the entire nation was under government control. The government decided how much grain the peasants could keep. The rest had to be sold at low prices to the state.
The grain ration for the peasants was very low, not enough. Plus, you had to obey the leadership. You had to fulfill the state quota. State first, then the people.
Peasants complained about the policies.
They said, we can't keep one extra ear of grain for ourselves. Do you think this is fair? I said, it's not fair. So I wrote to the provincial leadership. Things couldn't go on like this. No matter how much you grew, you still had to give it to the state. You couldn't eat it. The province sent people down to investigate. They saw things were just the way I said, but they couldn't solve it. It was a big problem.
Collectives did not make the peasants better off, nor did they increase production. Mao still had to find a way to finance his vision of an industrial China.
主席曾经这样说过：“你们年轻人是朝气蓬勃、正在兴旺时期，好像早晨8、9点钟的太阳。希望寄托在你们的身上。孩子们，做出新的、更好的成绩。”完成任务。
The communists controlled most intellectual life. Plays and films had to follow strict guidelines. Mao saw that this control was stifling potentially useful new ideas. He was also disturbed by the emergence of a new elite in the party itself. In 1956, Mao decided to encourage constructive criticism of the party. He called for 100 flowers to bloom in the arts and 100 schools of thought to contend in science.
I was all for the slogan of letting 100 flowers bloom. We all felt that we had really started to have democracy. Soon, all the walls in Beijing University were covered with big posters. People expressed their points of view and asked the Communist Party for changes.
Yu Beijian called many high school teachers unqualified. Shang Dashi complained medical research was falling behind. More and more people criticized party corruption and inefficiency.
Committee members and leaders at all levels were criticized by ordinary people. They had quite a tough time. So they did not like 100 flowers. They felt as if they were punching bags. They were not happy.
Under pressure from the party, Mao reversed himself. In June 1957, he published an article calling the people who had spoken out enemies and rightists. Mao appointed Deng Xiaoping to lead the anti-rightist movement.
I was supposed to have committed 29 crimes. One was that I supported the policy of letting 100 flowers bloom. It was Mao Zedong himself who started the policy. How could it be a crime? But it was.
The rightists were denounced in front of their colleagues in struggle meetings. Professor Ge Peiqi was criticized in this meeting at the People's University in Beijing.
不可是没有一个党员相信党吗？党就是我们的救星，怎么会党接了10万8千里？我相信你可能会党接近10万8千里吧？你不相信党吗？那么这党跟关系呢？这是我个人的感觉是吧？我觉得呢，就是在这个解放以后到现在呢，不与在解放以前那时候那么亲密，这是我的感觉是吧？ 那至于说那个10万8千里啊，那些词啊都是这个用作为形容，很不恰当啊。就说一疏远，这是我到现在的一个这么一个感觉上，这感觉可能不对了上。你站在什么立场发的言？你还是站在你人民教师、人民大学的讲师的立场发言呢？你还是代表你过去少将的阶级立场发言？你说的这些话，你是代表哪一个？
Ge Peiqi was my neighbor. He was already done for. That's what we called it. I saw his youngest child, who was about 5 or 6 months old. His nurse had quit. The baby was crawling outside the building under the burning sun. I felt sorry for him and picked him up. Some people said, you shouldn't do that. Ge Peiqi is a bad person. Why are you holding his child? You'll get into trouble. They meant well. I said, the baby hasn't done anything wrong.
Ge Peiqi's family was ostracized for years. Ge Peiqi himself spent the next 2 decades doing hard labor.
I had been in the revolutionary ranks for so many years. At the meeting, I was the most senior person there. but I was finished. I suddenly realized that I had fallen from the sky down to the earth. I could never get up again. I was a rightist, and I was kicked out.
In an internal party document, Mao estimated that about 10% of the people were rightists. Local officials interpreted this to mean they had to find 10 rightists among every 100 people.
They accused my wife of telling my son to tell other children that their land and house were ours. It wasn't true. She never said anything like that. But when you were told to confess, you had to say something. They wouldn't let you go if you didn't. People at the meeting shouted, "Struggle against her, hit her." She was just a peasant woman. She wasn't like me. I could make things up on the spot so I wouldn't get hurt. She couldn't do that. What could we do? Someone took her backstage. He said to her, "Just say anything. Say you were wrong in saying this or doing that." But my old woman was stupid. Her mind did not work fast. She was taught what to say. She walked onto the stage saying, "Okay, okay, I'll say that." But once she was there, she forgot everything. She was scared stiff. When she got home, she cried and cried. It was 1958, during the anti-rightist movement. It was the first time she was ever repudiated. But she was not labeled a rightist. She was not qualified. Not at all qualified.
Nearly 1 million people were condemned as rightists. They were sent to jail and prison camps or to work in the countryside. The anti-rightist campaign effectively silenced China's intellectuals. Mao had decided that they were no longer needed.